Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming, presented by Codename Entertainment and TakeThis.org. Every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games, or later on your favorite podcast service, Mitra Jordan and Raffael Boccamazzo, aka Dr. B, talk about mental health in these unprecedented times, as well as how gaming affects us. If you're here with us live in the chat, you can leave a question that I, Treavor Bettis, will ask them later in the show. And our topic today, it's the first part of a two-parter, where we're talking about family and the holidays. So we're all holidayed up. Look at us. Well, unless you're listening to the audio, then you can't look at us. But go look at the VOD. We're all holidayed up.
No, for those of you who are the audio listeners, oh my, the amount of majesty that you're missing out on is incredible.
He's really overselling this.
No, Mitra's majesty cannot be oversold. All right, she's radiating majesty.
Meanwhile, I'm in a Star Wars Christmas sweater. Dr. B no longer looks like the jerk from Good Will Hunting.
As my hair's gotten longer.
Yeah, but he's got a bow tie on. It's very festive, and it looks very good.
I am not keeping this hat on. Let's just be clear.
Why?
I'm wearing it to make a point.
I know we're here to talk about important stuff about psychology, but real talk, why do they make the Santa hats out of the most uncomfortable to wear materials that exist?
They really do.
And it doesn't make any sense at all. They're like, hey, you already have to be around screaming children that are ripping open presents and whatnot. How about your head be itchy as heck as well?
Okay, I'm gonna point out that the really good Santa outfits are made from non-polyester. All right, and are actually quite comfortable if you get the real good ones.
So not only do you have a Fez guy, you have a Santa Claus suit guy. Okay, got it.
I don't actually have a person for that, but I do have a number of people I know who are professional Kris Kringles and have guided me in that direction for Santa hat needs.
I wouldn't expect any less of a story from you. Also, someone pointed out it is a Life Day sweater. You are 100% right, it is. But before I derail this conversation anymore, like I said, yes, we're here to talk about family and the holidays, and this is a two-part episode. But before we get to that, who are you two for the fine folks who may not know?
I am a therapist practicing in Victoria, BC. I was going to say for a second. I have a private practice, and before I continue babbling, I will pass you off to Dr. B.
Well, we're flickering.
We're flickering. Yep, we flickered because...
Oh no, lights out. Lights out, everyone.
I think...
What's going on?
Well, no, we're back again. We're back again.
Are we back? Nope. Okay, yeah. I apparently moved my foot wrong and kicked my headphone cable. 100% unplugged it. Which made my audio recording have to restart as well.
Oh,
so
no.
That's great.
Well,
Don't
worry.
worry.
You're doing that,
It'll be fine.
Let me regale the audience with tales of holidays past.
What is going on? Yeah, go for it. I'm just going to use the VOD audio.
So, hey, everybody. I am Raffael Boccamazzo, better known as Dr. B. I am a doctor of clinical psychology. I'm a psychologist. And I am the clinical director for nearly 6 years now over at TakeThis.org. And we get to be here with all of you to talk about mental health stuffs. I borrowed a lot of money to be able to say that. Mental health stuffs.
Mental health stuffs.
Yeah, no, it's but we're here to talk about specifically holidays and all the stressors that we can face during the holidays.
Yeah, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the holidays. Why would we need to talk about it in mental health? There's absolutely no reason for it to be a problem at all.
It's a time of nothing but joy and happiness.
That's why we look so happy.
Yes, that's why we look distressed while wearing Santa hats. And yes, it is slightly itchy now that you mention. So hats off to everyone who survives Christmas. I am done with that.
You rode that pun so far,
elegantly.
And I appreciate you.
Elegantly
so
is the word
much.
you're looking for.
The hair may not be what it could be, folks, but the reality is that Christmas is, of course, a very difficult time for a lot of people, and the holidays in general as well. And I mention Christmas because we know that at this time of year, particularly if you live in North America, there is often such a focus on this one holiday, but we want to recognize that it certainly isn't the only holiday, and it's certainly not the only event that brings people together at this time of year. And it is that togetherness and the challenges of that togetherness that we really want to talk about today. Why is it so difficult? Why isn't it just a fun time? What is going on that it's so difficult and challenging for many of us?
Yes? Well,
we have lots of ideas about this.
Oh, so many. But actually, I want to bring this up with the chat, okay? Because this is really important, and we've talked about this before. But hey, chat.
Hey, chat.
Hey, chat. When we say the holidays, just type this into the chat. What do you what's the first thing that comes to mind? Like in terms of what are we celebrating? Just gut reaction. First thing, presents. Okay. What's the absolute first thing? Decembermas, family, code. Yes, always get the code.
Food, family. What?
Okay. Diwali Christmaka. Yes.
Long hours working. Oh, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
I feel you on that.
Shopping. Yeah. Snow. All right.
Babylon Ranger. I wish.
Friends and swimming. All right.
That sounds good.
Santa.
So if
retail sucks, 100%.
Yeah. Pressure.
Oh yes, that one. I'm gonna pick that one and just put that right there.
Yeah. Chosen family. That is an interesting one because it did such a process to get there. So yeah, lonely days at home. Yeah. Hubby doesn't get days off.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like holidays. The word holidays means so many different things at any given moment to so many different people.
And for me, and this is the cynical part of me. As soon as I've started thinking about it, I start hearing about people complain about the war on Christmas when it becomes a time of contention for so many people. When we're going to be really clear that largely what we're talking about here today on Idle Champions is coming from a very U.S. and Canadian-based perspective.
Yep.
And despite the fact that we're coming from this, the fact that Christmas is considered the default by so many people, I just want to remind you how many cultures and religions have major holidays within the November, December time frame. Okay. Bodhi Day for the Buddhists, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Yalda for Zoroastrians, Yule. I mean, even Eastern Orthodox Christianity comes from things with a slightly different calendar than Catholics and Protestants. So,
yep. And sometimes Muharram and one of the Eids can fall at this time of year as well.
Sometimes Ramadan is during this time of year.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes on this time of year. And we're going to try and be as inclusive with that as possible.
So, and I'd like to point out, as someone who grew up multinational, multiracial, and dual religious, that the tensions between the various ways of celebrating can also be really difficult around this time of year. For example, in my family, we had a Christian matriarch and a Muslim patriarch, and some years Christmas happened and some years Christmas didn't. And it was really about often the tension in that relationship that determined whose needs were going to be seen that year versus not. And it was, I think, quite confusing, certainly In fact, I know quite confusing for myself as a child in that environment. So many of us might be coming from these kinds of backgrounds where the holidays weren't a time of unalloyed joy. And how do we decide to do them or enact them? And we're going to talk about that inaction versus the felt reality of our experience as well.
Well, there's so many expectations, and that's really what a lot of this comes down to. I mean, as we were talking about this, we have these images and these expectations of the way things are supposed to be, not only for ourselves but others. One of the things that my father, who is the PTSD poster child in so many respects, he's got a lot of challenges around emotional expression and so forth. And something that wigs me out every year is that inevitably somebody will say, well, it's the holidays, you're supposed to be happy this time of year. And there I am, and they mean it in an encouraging way, but oh my God, let's talk about the amount of pressure you just put on another human being to feel something different for your sake.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the recent topic, toxic positivity.
Absolutely.
And this season is absolutely full of it. It's like we planned that.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Just the amount of the expectations to holiday correctly. God, for anybody who struggles with, ADHD, for, those of us who are autistic, who don't express emotions the way other people expect, PTSD, all sorts of stuff. And to have the additional expectation that we have to conform to other people's expectations of emotional expression, that we can't experience things just the way we experience things, that is miserable.
That we can't share our experiencing.
Right.
We may have that internal experience, but we're supposed to be a different way, and not being able to share what's genuinely going on for us can be really, really stressful. Yeah.
Sorry.
So
yeah, go ahead.
No, please. You were going to take us in a direction. Otherwise, Mitra and I are just going to be ranting. We're going to finally get to the point where I'm ranting about my hatred of Hallmark movies. And
I mean,
oh yeah, we're going to get
why
there.
not now? Because basically the way that I was going to take us was like, commercialism of it. And I'm not talking about the capitalist way of doing it, where like you got to buy. It's just the way, like what you're saying with the toxic positivity of the messaging, where it's like, even in the commercials, it's like everyone's smiling and happy around a Christmas tree. Why aren't you? And yeah, Hallmark, I mean, Hallmark, like when I was a kid, Hallmark was just that store that you went and bought a Christmas card at. That was it. You did it. You done. Somebody buying a lot of ornaments that I don't understand how you have that much tree room for.
I mean, but I think that the attitudes around Christmas and Christmas needing to be a certain way has been around for a very, very long time. If we go back to Dickens and Scrooge, there's a lot of good, of course, in the Christmas story that was being told there about letting go, about how it is about family and home. But certainly in its presentation as well, there is a clear sort of a mandate to merry-make, right?
Yeah.
To enjoy each other's company, to share good food, to share all of this stuff, to be together, and that's great if you're fortunate enough to have a family that you feel that kind of genuine emotional connection with, and you have then the opportunity to spend time with them. But for most of us, that's not the reality of this time of year, and there are often all of those multiple pressures around either having to work more if you're in retail or if you're a healthcare worker. Certainly, I remember back when I was working professionally in kitchens, it was often the busiest time of the year.
Yeah.
And there was often a real push-pull around actually spending time with people that I cared about. As well, having moved across the country at one point, I did actually spend one Christmas alone, and one Christmas quite unhappily with a bunch of friends who were drinking too much. So like, you kind of feel like, oh, I suppose I should be with people then. And that can feel worse sometimes. Yeah. So,
I did just want to explain why I laughed in the middle of you saying something very genuine. Was because in my head I was like, what is the message of A Christmas Story? And immediately in my head I heard either be happy,
shoot your eye out.
No, sorry, Christmas Carol.
Sorry, very different tale.
Immediately in my head I hear either be happy during Christmas or a spider Muppet will sell all your crap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Very strange.
But there's value to ritual and tradition. And I don't want it to seem like we're all just, all tradition, all ritual, all expectations are awful. But there's a balance to be maintained between rituals that are helpful, rituals that are joyful, and rigidly holding to those rituals in such a predetermined manner that deviance from the Christmas norms will not be tolerated. And and then the Futurama Santa Claus is going to come down and clean up from all the good, so all the bad boys and girls and other, ladies and gentle thems will be eliminated from.
So you're saying essentially, so be good for goodness sake, right?
How am I not winning the pun war on Christmas here?
It's from the carol.
Yeah, it's right in there.
I'm fully aware what it's from.
You seemed uncertain.
God, I am just getting obliterated here.
I don't know why. In the lead up to this,
it's the Christmas really sweater vest. It's holding it all in.
It's true. The bow tie has you strangulated.
God dang it.
And I took the hat off, so it works, right?
Oh God, my neck and all the blood circulation is wrapped up in a neat little bow. It's just not working for me right now. But we've got there's a balance to be maintained between these holiday with rituals that actually help us celebrate things, remember things, and advance our mental wellness, versus these rigidly held ideas that we can't deviate from, because that hurts us. It really, really does. And we saw this in the chat with people who somebody said pressure. Yeah. The pressure to conform. Yeah.
And I think there's also, in terms of pressure, there can also be the family you marry into and their Christmas traditions, for example, because maybe if you're like me and have this multicultural experience of Christmas shows up, sometimes it doesn't, we still celebrate and get together. But then you have a family that has some very significant traditions around Christmas. And the way things are done, one can feel rather left out in that situation, and a certain amount of pressure to make things work, for your family, or to create the Christmas you feel that your kids should have. And that it doesn't matter in terms of you and your partner, what you come from, but in terms of what you want to create can also create pressure for you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. I mean, the more and more I thought about this as we plan this out, it really does come down to rigid expectations, whether it's rigid expectations for yourself or rigid expectations on others,
mm-hmm.
or rigid expectations from others on you.
Yeah.
Fair.
These rigid expectations seem to be at the heart of everything that we talked about that stresses us out during the holiday times, the way we're supposed to be celebrating, the way we're supposed to be thinking, the way we're supposed to be feeling.
Right. And so definitely also some self-judgment if we're not feeling how we're supposed to be in some instances. And definitely some real challenges if we can't be authentic with our family for one reason or another. Whether it's that you're there with your partner, but you're probably going to separate, or whether you've got a coming out process that you aren't ready to share or haven't shared with your family or don't feel safe to share. These are ways in which our authentic selves can't show up in those environments.
Well, and I mean, even in other subtle or not so subtle ways, the idea of monetary pressures as well. That if you don't somehow buy just these amazing Christmas gifts or holiday gifts or whatever for people, then you're somehow doing it wrong. You don't love them enough. When there are a lot of people who will put themselves into debt and financially harm themselves to meet these rigid expectations. And that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, and I can think of families where there's been something difficult that's happened in the year, either an accident or pain or some challenge, or, you know, there's this desire to really make up for it over Christmas time, you know, with the right gifts, with the right amount of time or energy. And it can feel like a lot of pressure for people in that situation as well. So,
yeah.
yeah, just bringing it down to those kinds of specifics so that we can kind of land our minds on why this time of year is so difficult. Yeah. And maybe people being able to acknowledge for themselves what they would like to be different this year, or how they would like to kind of touch in to their own sense of that pressure and what we might do to alleviate it.
Well, and we haven't even gotten into the realities of living with mental health challenges this time of year. That there's a lot of complications around that. I mentioned my father and his PTSD. Well, some of that stuff is tied up with memories of family. And so that, and for so many people who, one of the most toxic myths I think out there in the world is that this idea that family is always family no matter what. And I'm sorry, the accident of your genetic relations to someone does not make them sacrosanct, especially if they treat you as less than human.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You get to choose who your family is after, you know, certainly I appreciate when we're children and youth, we don't have an option often around our families, but when we're older and free to choose, if a family system is really toxic, we get to choose if we want to participate in that.
Yeah.
And I have no shortage of friends, some from in the LGBTQIA plus community, some who are recovering from extremely conservative religious backgrounds in their family, that they sort of broke away from that stuff. And there is a lot of trauma around family, and they had to create their own holiday traditions to essentially rewrite their own narratives with their chosen families, the people who give them the kind of love and support and acceptance that they wish their biological families always did, but never actually came through on. And some of that stuff is lovely, but I'm fortunate enough to participate in some of it. But God, the amount of pain they had to go through to get to that point is not to be underestimated.
And as well, I want to point out that sometimes when we're in these situations where our chosen families or our spouse or their families are actually a safe place that people we enjoy being with, we might experience some grief around how our family wasn't that, right? Because there's something about having the felt experience of being loved and accepted and supported after potentially, you know, a lifetime or many formative years of not having that. The contrast can mean we just feel a lot of loss around who our family was not.
Yeah, again, that's that expectations, those expectations again, that what we have this idea of the way things are supposed to be, and we feel this intense sense of loss when we can feel this intense sense of loss when it doesn't live up to those expectations.
Right. So that if you have an experience of your mother-in-law, say, as the good mother, and someone who's really caring and expansive and arms out, you know, and then you've got your own mother who maybe wasn't that person. We wonder about, well, why it just kind of hits in a tender place sometimes for people. So if you are having a Christmas that's better this year, or a holiday that's better, or a Thanksgiving that's better, whichever event it is, and you notice yourself feeling some grief and loss, it might be coming from that place of what was lost or not experienced in the past. And that's totally normal. So that's a healthy experience. From a therapeutic standpoint, that's a corrective emotional experience that you're having, but it also points to what you had before. So
yeah, no, grief can manifest in all sorts of strange and wonky ways, but it back in the days when I used to work with people, one of the things that came up often during the holidays was the struggles with their own internalized sense of guilt, of similar to what you just mentioned, Mitra, the idea that, well, there's this thing I didn't have as a kid, and maybe now I do now. I've got a family that loves me. Am I a bad person for enjoying it when I know my biological family might still be struggling? Am I a bad person for, giving boundaries between the, there's a lot of complications with this, even when we're taking steps, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about that next week, taking steps to help ourselves. That can bring forth a lot of grief in and of, with that. It's just so complicated.
That's true. The steps that we take cause us to look at how we were living our lives before, or what we were tolerating as well. And that can be another factor that can make it difficult in terms of just giving ourselves permission to enjoy life now, so.
Well, and what about things like seasonal affective disorder?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So recognize that at this point in the year where there's a lot less light, a lot of people have challenges with that. I mean, I remember well before I was practicing as a mental health professional, I remember always feeling just a little bit down in October. And I remember saying to a friend, oh, I just don't know, I feel pretty down. And she said, you know what? You feel this way every October. Luckily, she'd known me a long time. But so reflect on your past Octobers and Novembers and ask yourself if you just notice a downturn in your energy or in your mood. For some people, it can be severe, but for others, it can be mild. And we don't quite know why, maybe. And so just taking a closer look at that. Also, for a lot of us, things start to get really busy around September, at a point where, from an evolutionary perspective, our bodies are actually slowing down. And so we're having to push that much harder. So by the time you get to late November and celebrations of all kinds start to pick up, you might be really exhausted. It might be hard to come into that with any energy.
I never thought about that contrast before, that the idea that, the way our circadian rhythms work, when things get darker, we get tired. I never thought about that contrast between, this is the time of year for many people where their social and even work expectations are at their peak.
It's almost like this. So our energy is sort of dipping like this, and our expectations of capacity and what we're supposed to do are sort of going up. So it's like a real mismatch that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, be nice to anybody who's working this time of year.
Absolutely.
I want to take a break real quick for a disclaimer, because I feel like that is a whole can of worms to open up right there that I have a lot to say about. So we're going to take a quick break to remind our viewers and listeners of a disclaimer, and then we'll be back to talk some more about this. So be right back.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Okay, now that you've listened to the most relaxing disclaimer of all time, also remember, if you have any questions, we spend a little bit of the end of the episode answering those. You can put those into the chat, and our lovely moderators, Martin and Mars, will grab those and put them in a doc for me. But until then, for the love of everything, be nice to people working just anywhere during this time. Just anywhere. Like you were saying earlier about food industry. That's you know, that and retail. Those are my two big ones. I spent the most amount of time in restaurant work. The day after Thanksgiving in America, not a single person wants to cook, and every one of them just goes out to eat somewhere with the family they have in town and something like that. And all of the stuff that was bubbling up on Thanksgiving, that's still there and going to the restaurants. And oh my god. Oh
Absolutely.
my God. That we looked at the day after Thanksgiving almost just like a war. Like we had battle strategies and everything.
Absolutely. It was very difficult. I remember one restaurant where I worked, there was a couple who would do kind of a holiday party thing at the restaurant, and they were very wealthy, and it was a lot of money for the restaurant, I think. And certainly there was a lot of the wait staff I knew absolutely hated working those events, and found it very difficult to deal with this couple who were kind of like, if you were walking by their table, it didn't matter who you were, they'd hand over a plate.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mitra, did you just make eye contact with me? What we have talked about this, you do not make eye contact with me, okay?
Oh God, yeah, that one. That I've
So
heard
horrible.
that one.
Yeah.
The one we had, the Mexican restaurant I worked at, one of the great ones around this time was we put chip bowls on everybody's table when they get there. And if some people thought that when they got emptied, the best way to let us know about that was to pick that up and start shaking it at the nearest employee.
Yeah. Yeah. And these guys would be like, you know, if you were walking by or anything.
Oh.
Like that. I mean, it was just absolutely awful. You know, demeaning.
I'm ready to
right?
fight. I'm over here ready to fight. I'm just like, all the manager rage is coming back.
Welcome to the real war for Christmas. Well, but so first of all, tip your servers. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Tip them well during the holidays. I want to bring up those people who are in industries that are, one, underpaid.
Yep.
And two, not tipped.
Yep.
Let's talk retail.
Yep.
Let's
Absolutely.
talk retail, especially given how much we have pushed in America, especially the idea of sales into literally Thanksgiving. The number of people who have open stores on Thanksgiving Day, one who do not pay the employees a living wage, two, require them to be there on Thanksgiving or the day after, or they're fired. This is becoming more and more common. And the amount of people who are acting quite the fool on those shopping days.
Absolutely. I don't see this out here. Do you have it? Do you have it in the back?
Oh.
Do you have it in black? In a 14?
Actually, real quick. People who haven't worked retail, meet me on the other side of this mic. Hey, so you know that spiel that you get every time you go up to the register about a credit card or a membership or just anything, trade-in games, whatever. We know you hate those. We hate them too. But that person that's over there that's watching everything that we do, we don't say that. We get chewed out. Just let us say the spiel. Just let it just it is 30 seconds out of your life. Just let it happen. Just be cool, and we'll get done. All right, continue.
Hey, Starbucks, stop expecting people to smile. It's actually pretty great that we can wear masks now because it makes it so much easier for your employees. Jeez. Or
Yeah.
any place where it's just like, no, you're expected to really put on that smiley face, be happy. Are you kidding me? It's hard. These kinds of jobs are difficult.
Well, and they're also, you know, in the United States at least, pushing, like, let's take Black Friday for instance. There, so many stores are like, oh, we're gonna open like at noon on Thanksgiving. Just come on in. Screw all of our employees that want to have a nice time or even try, like, not even time with family. Just not be there. Just not be there. We're going to mess all that up. Everyone else got the day off and whatnot, but you want to come in here and get flat screen for, you know, 25% off. All right, come on.
I actually, at this point, I will not shop at any store that does that to their employees.
100%.
If you... we get into the living wages thing, which is a whole nother ball of wax, which needs to be freaking fixed. But as a small thing, I refuse to buy anything from stores that will be open on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, straight up.
Or that open at like midnight on that Friday.
Yeah.
Will not do it.
Yeah,
God,
no,
we've all either worked retail or restaurant industry, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're all just like, oh God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to single out any particular coffee shops, actually, to be fair to that particular one. I just want to say that that's a tendency in retail and certainly in customer service generally. That's a high expectation of people who may be having also a tough day. We can all be courteous, but we don't have to like.
So I actually want to talk about something that just came up in the chat real quick. I'm not calling you out. That you brought up a thing that I want to talk about. It's who's this? Charke 515. You know who you are. Said was hoping the COVID reset would have fixed this. The thing is, from what I have heard, news from the field, it's made it worse. Because people do not know people didn't really know how to interact once we got vaccines and we're getting back out into the world. And people were like, oh, people are acting strange now. And it's getting worse now. Oh, I've already heard stories from both retail and coffee shop spaces that people are like, it is worse than it's ever been. So go the extra bit, everybody that's watching this, because if you're watching this right now, you're good people. I appreciate you. Go a little bit extra for those people working at out there because they're gonna need it this year. 100%.
Yeah, I think the difficulty too is like here we're expected to show vaccination cards before going into a restaurant, but that is not the same in a takeout space or grocery or the mall. And so I think that there's spaces where I think people might be feeling varying degrees of anxiety, or maybe they're on the other side of the spectrum where it's like, it's not a big deal to them around COVID and vaccines. And I get that, you know, we're all different. But part of the problem is the unclarity sometimes of rules around these spaces that I think leave us all wondering what's okay and what's not. Mm-hmm. And of course, different cities, different states, different countries have a different way of handling this, and that adds to the confusion. So yeah, I think that for many people around Christmas, what I remember is in the UK, a lot of people were like, well, I'm still doing Christmas, right? And I remember that being actually a big thing in the news here in Canada. It was like, really, you're still doing Christmas? And, you know, you kind of have your rising rates in terms of infection. And is that really a good idea? And they certainly did see a spike in infection numbers post-Christmas. And so, and I use the word Christmas because that was the one that came up in context with this story. But I do feel that, of course, there's not just the tradition or wish to get together around this time of year, but there's the divisiveness that can occur in families and among friend groups around how cautious do we want to be. Mm-hmm. And some people will be like, but you need to come to my holiday party or whatever. And others are like, no, did you tell us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to make Thanksgiving and holiday plans. And I'm like, I'm sorry, my conspiracy theorist relatives are going to be there when they're going to tell me all about how I've had multiple microchips installed, and meanwhile I know they've had, most of them have had COVID at least once. Peace.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
hard pass.
Yeah.
I know that I usually say these for the end, but I gotta call these out because I just don't trust myself to remember them. Oh God, where did it go? So someone was, oh, here it is. This was from Cruciferius Kale, which is just, that's a name. Well
That
done.
is a great
That's the best.
Cruciferius Kale. That is amazing.
On a purely selfish note, it is good to show extra kindness to retail/customer service folks because they can often decide how helpful to be with whatever it is that you need from them. That is 1000% true.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When I worked at the bookstore, someone comes and was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I know you're super busy right now. I'm just trying to find this book for my kid. It's for Christmas, and he's really want it. I will go. You tell me that kid wants that book. I will search this whole damn store for it. You get the person that Mitra was talking about earlier is like, do you have this in the back? Excuse me, you have this in the back? I'll look like this. Nope, we ain't got.
Oh my God, the difference
Absolutely.
between I'm so sorry to bother you and yo.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh my God, leaps
Absolutely.
and bounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And just I think that the expectation somehow that it should be up to underpaid staff.
Yeah.
I think somebody here was saying, yeah, doorbell streams. This is such a good point. Why are we leaving it up to underpaid staff without management backing them up to set boundaries around, your establishment's determined practices or rules around mask wearing and all the rest of it? If you have an expectation, they need to back up their staff. It's so difficult otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame. I mean, I walked into a store a few months ago, sweet little attendant, 5 foot nothing, maybe 16, and this big burly guy comes in wearing his mask under his nose. There's a clear policy on the door about what you're supposed to do. It doesn't matter whether you or I personally think one should have to wear masks or not. It's about the policy and putting that kid in the position of maybe having to say, sir, could you, like, he's like 8 times wider than she is and 4 times taller. Like, come on, it's so unfair.
Yeah.
So, and you just made her day more difficult. And I can guarantee you're going to make any holiday time that she has coming up more difficult as well.
Oh yeah.
So
okay, I want to hop over into questions because we do have quite a few of them for today. And I do want to say that, like, this episode, this was very much a venting, setting up episode for next week. We didn't really end on like, here's what you can do. Here's some things that we found.
That's next week.
That's next week.
That's
We
next
knew we
week.
had to vent first.
We have feelings.
We have feelings.
we're setting the stage.
I could go for 3 hours about how angry I am from retail and restaurant work during the holidays. You want to see a stand-up angry set? It will be that.
Oh no!
Would you like to do some processing, Trevor? Can I help with that?
We're gonna, we were talking about this beforehand, and we're gonna talk about this afterwards. But we're gonna share. I mean, we're gonna share our very gallows humor holiday comments once the cameras go off.
That's true. Okay, let's hop back to the beginning of the episode where I'm being told that the audio and video cut out. Herkwork says, I love that my parents never let any holiday quote unquote win, so to speak. Jewish/Christian upbringing, but nothing forced. I actually had a friend like this in elementary school.
Cool.
His father was Jewish, his mother was Christian, and they just did both. Like, I remember driving by his house. They had a Christmas tree that had blue and white lights all over it, and they had a menorah near it and everything. And I remember there was this kid, because like what I didn't realize as a child was I was very much bordering on the edge of atheism because I just did not understand religion. And there was another kid that just could not wrap his head around this, and he was like, "No, you can't do that." And I'm over here just going, "But why? Why can't you do both? I don't. What do you mean? I don't understand." So yeah, no, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that would have been wonderful. I was actually in my previous life being married. We had an intercultural, interfaith marriage, and that created a lot of tension sometimes. When I would have loved to have just done a Christmas tree that we decorated with blue and white lights, or a menorah that I put, branches on.
And this is where it really starts with the attitude, right? An attitude of openness and sharing goes so much further.
Yeah.
Then they know this is how it has to be.
Yeah.
You know, which is just constricting and oppressive and
rigid
painful.
traditions.
I will say, if you want to hear somebody give a good rant about Christian traditions, or not Christian, Christmas traditions, one of the Jim Gaffigan albums, he does this great freaking set about Christmas. Like, it sounds like the actions of a drunk man. I'm gonna cut down this tree, bring it out here, take these lights, put them out there. It's a really good set. Let's see. Carly in 72. I always struggle with names. I apologize to all of you ahead of time. Holiday is when everybody is forced to take time off. A vacation is when you want it. And most of the holidays are based on the more sale stuff we don't need. That's true. Holiday is time you don't want off. Vacation is time you do. I like that.
Absolutely. And all of the things that you feel like you have to buy but don't want to, oh boy. Or that I'd say you don't necessarily feel it, but there is some sense of you should want this from the broader cultural, you know, you were saying?
No, I'm thinking about my own experiences in this. Like every year people want to buy me just to show that they care. They buy me all these tchotchkes that I'm not going to use, are going to get thrown away. And I feel terrible about this because I'm like, okay, let me, this is autistic, you know, pedantic, cynical brain. I'm like, okay, so somebody extruded petroleum products and then forged it into plastic in China, not to mention the carbon costs of them shipping it here. So you could feel better about buying me a $5 trinket that I'm never going to really use and is going to get thrown away. How about we just hang out? How about we just hang out? But there's this disconnect because they have to show physically, you know, their gratitude for me. I'm like, I would just feel better if we just hung out together. Let's go have a beer. Let me make you dinner. Let me have an experience with you, as opposed to, you know, the people who buy me rubber chickens, that's always appreciated because that's just a sacred thing. But
because rubber chickens.
Yeah.
But it's just, it gets so complicated, especially when we get around these topics of both rigid traditions and consumerism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grumble.
Star Chaser 43 has a great point. I keep flashing to the first TV Christmas special, Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown, and how Charlie Brown spends the first 30 minutes dealing with all of the expectations he is unable to meet.
Right.
Very true.
Good grief.
It is kind of weird too, because like that always is a thing. Like even A Christmas Story, like one of the B plots is like the fact that there's so much pressure on Christmas and then you got to get it right and everything like that, and how stressful it is. And it's always weird how like that's a B plot in like every Christmas thing except for Hallmark movies, which you didn't get a chance to rant about. We'll do that next week. And it's like everyone knows it, but we're like, whatever. I'm sure it's not having any mental repercussions on us. Whatever. It's just laughed off. Hazen asked.
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Hazen asks, instead of being told to be happy on the holidays, would you say it was meant more as for us to find happiness?
Cool. I mean, if you left it under the couch accidentally and it's easy to pick up, then great. But even the topic of happiness is such a complicated thing. And we've touched on this before in a previous episode, that there's a difference between satisfaction in life and momentary joy. Yeah. And I'm so angry at how well the oatmeal did that. If you haven't seen that oatmeal comic, go read it. But joy, happiness is a transient state. Satisfaction is a very different thing, and we use happiness so ubiquitously, so broadly, that it gets incredibly complicated. You can't be happy all the time. You know what we call that? Mania.
Right. And also, if we look at it this way, there's this strange expectation that we should be happy, right? But if I said to you, you should be angry all the time, you'd look at me like I was nuts, right? You know, and that's not a mental health diagnosis, but you know what I'm saying. So why is there an expectation that somehow we should have this level of joy going on all the time when emotions generally just come and go?
Yeah.
So don't expect any one emotion to hang around all of the time. Now, if you do spend more of your time feeling angry than anything else, that's probably something you need to work on. And it's the same with any other feeling. If you walk around feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety or dread or grief, you know, get some support around that.
Yeah.
But to expect that one emotion is going to be, and it's a positive one, is going to be there just all of the time.
Yeah.
No.
I do want to point something out that I felt the whole time this episode, there's something in the back of my head that I'm just like, something's not fitting right. I remember what it is. You know, we're ranting about this and whatnot and everything like that. But for the people that do enjoy Christmas stuff, holiday stuff and whatnot, let them.
Yes.
Like, here's the thing. What you were talking about earlier with like the sun going down earlier and, you know, whatnot. I 100% have that. Last night, I was sitting on the couch. The sun had just gone down. It was like 5:30. And I told my wife, like, I'm not feeling great mentally. And she's like, I know. I expected it.
Yep.
Hop on the games with some of your friends. Just hang out with them. Don't worry about it. I'll be watching Leverage. And so, yeah, that is a thing that happens. But I actually really do enjoy Christmas crap. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I just do. I like Christmas music. So sue me. But like, so when I'm already fighting off this like literal nightly brain funk, and then to be like, but you know what? At least I enjoy Christmas stuff. And then everyone will be like, you're terrible for liking that. How dare you like this stuff? And I'm just like, okay, well, now you're just coming at me twice.
Right. So I want to make a distinction. Okay.
Someone said, oh, yeah, Leverage. Heck yeah.
Between enacting something and feeling something. Okay. Yeah. If I'm being told you have to get it together, it's Christmas, your mother's made an effort to make this, that, and the other, you better just get it together. That is about enactment. Yeah. That is about, I'm holding it in. We're going to, you know, and that is different than what I'm really feeling. What I want for people, what I hope for myself as well, is that I can be real with my family and friends, no matter what time of year it is. That doesn't mean that there can't be pleasure to be derived around this time of year or get-togethers of good food or any of that. But to feel like, well, there's things I can't say or do or be. And remember, we're human beings, not just human doings. Mm-hmm. You know, there's things that I can't do or be because I have to be a certain way because it's this special day.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'm not going to ruin someone's wedding day or anything. Come on, let's face it. But there are times when we have to be a certain way in order to hold the space for others at times, funerals, weddings. Okay. Those are the big ones. But Christmas is different, and it's about all of us. It's not just about a couple or a family or an individual or a death or a specific event like that. Christmas and Eid and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and whatever you're celebrating when you get together as a group, that's about the group. That's not about any one person.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. We should get to be ourselves and not have to enact something because someone else expects it of us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those differences are okay, that when sometimes we're going to enjoy things and sometimes we're not. And somebody's lack of enjoyment, so long as they're not being a jerk about it, that's not a threat to you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And your enjoyment.
Yeah.
Right. If somebody's having a tough day, or the turkey's a little dry and they're worried about it, or whatever it is, you know,
Thanksgiving's ruined.
Working,
oh my God.
Right?
Keep all your food opinions to yourself, for the love of God. You can talk about them with your spouse later or whoever later. Just if you're just stop. Just don't do it. It doesn't need to be brought up right there. But
exactly. And there's a difference between I get to feel my feelings because I'm having a tough time or my retail job is so difficult or whatever, and I'm going to impose all of these on the entire table, mm-hmm. right? There's a balance between everybody knows what's happening and can support me, but it doesn't need to be the center of attention all the time. But it's a factor, right? I'm seen, I'm heard, you know, and that's the environment we want to create together if we can.
Absolutely. I think that is a fantastic place to leave off this episode until we get to part 2 of it next week. But friends, where can people find you on the interwebs if they would like to do so?
So I can be found on Twitter at Mitra Jordan. And otherwise, I'm not super active on social media, as some of you have probably figured out. But you can find me on my website or via Twitter. I do respond to DMs. And thank you very much for being here today. Yeah. Dr. B now, he's everywhere.
I'm apparently on the level finish screen now for Idle Champions, which is, you know, a hashtag life goals.
I mean, let's be real. Getting ready for this episode was a little bit of an adventure. So you were calming down from it.
But you can find me on most of the socials at the Dr. B, TheeDoctor, B as in boy. But also make sure to follow Take This Org on Twitter, on Twitch, on all of that good stuff, because they're who I work for. They're who I do most of my work with, and yeah, they're good people to follow.
Yeah. You can find me on well, I'm just going to change it up because difficulty class is on a little bit of a pause. You can find me on the From the Same Mr. podcast, currently going every Friday through the season of the show. You can also find me on Champions of Lore every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games. And you also find me on Twitter at the Treavor. There is an A hiding in there. Thank you to Mars and Martin for moderating the chat and doing an awesome job today. And thank you to Codename Entertainment and Take This for giving us an opportunity to have these discussions. If you missed any part of this show, you can catch it later. Eventually, I have things to do, but it will be edited and up today on your favorite podcast services at some point. And if you have any suggestions for future topics that you'd like us to talk about, you can send this into championsofpsychology@codenameentertainment.com or just tweet them at us, because that's a really long email address. Just tweet them at us. If you are live with us right now, I'm sorry to say there's no Bardic Inspiration after this. It is off this week. I know. But it'll be back. Don't worry. Yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. So until next week, take care of yourself.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.